Okay, so I tried to make a live video, but apparently that didn't work because apparently my service sucks where I live. So this will be a video talking more about the Ecodiesel crank issue and explaining the issue or why the issue happens, because it seems to be a common question that a lot of people have, and it doesn't matter how many times that it gets answered, the question always comes up. So with that being said, the Ecodiesel engine was an engine that was designed by Ferrari and Maserati together to be used in the Maserati Gilby. Now, this engine works great in the Maserati Gilby. It is powerful, it gets good economy, and it is reliable. So Fiat said, hey, let's throw it in a Ram, and we'll have a good fuel efficient Ram for the half-ton world. Which was great and all, until they decided that the best way to get economy, instead of proper tuning for economy, was to have the engine run at the lowest physical RPM per mile per hour. Now, what this does is it, in certain circumstances, gives you really good gas mileage, because if you're running down the highway at 1200 RPMs, your engine's basically idling. And a diesel engine, on like a Cummins, when it idles, like my Cummins, if I let it idle, it takes 4 hours to burn a gallon of diesel. Obviously, you'll never be able to get a diesel to run at that low RPM down the highway and maintain speed. Now, so the issues that we have is that you have an engine. Hold on, this garbage can is probably really retarded loud. Okay, so the issues, what you have is you have an engine that is designed to run in a sports car, probably around 4,000 pound mark, in a pickup truck that runs 6,000 pounds. Okay, now one of the issues that you have with running a low RPM is you get what we call lugging. Lugging is when a engine runs at such a low RPM that the engine, it's so far below the power band that it's literally lugging. It is like putting a vehicle in, let's take a manual transmission and put it in 4th gear and start to drive and see what happens. This is what you're doing every time you lug an engine. Now, what you have is you have a cheap mass-produced diesel engine, and with components that are good for a car in a heavy-duty, not heavy-duty, but a full-size pickup truck. Hold on a second. Now, when you put them in a full-size pickup truck, the weight of the truck mixed with engine lugging is going to show you the weakest point. Now, in other vehicles like the Cummins, I shouldn't say the Cummins, like the Ram powered by Cummins, when you lug the engine, it breaks the transmission because the transmission is the weakest point. Unfortunately for the Ram 1500, the 8-speed ZF transmission is much stronger than the Ecodiesel engine itself. So what we end up having is the lugging basically puts the force on the crankshaft itself. As the crankshaft starts to flex and move around, it starts tearing up the bearings. As it starts to tear up the bearings, it is allowed to flex more and more. The more it flexes, the worse the bearings get until the bearings fail, which is the more common case. In other cases, what you end up having is you end up having a crankshaft that splits in half. I have pulled apart multiple engines with the crankshafts completely split in half, which is basically a product of the engine lugging mixed with the shitty casting, forming, designing, whatever you want to call it, of the crankshaft that is put in the motor. Now, even if you get in your Ecodiesel and you say, well, I drive at 1200 RPMs around town in 6th or 7th gear because that's what Ram has it set at. Well, the thing is just because Ram has it set there doesn't mean it's right. If everything Ram did was correct, you wouldn't have issues with your trucks like you do. So just because RAM set something a certain way doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. So with that being said, pay attention to your RPMs. Diesel engines should never fall below 1700 RPMs when you're in a overdrive gear. Now, if you were in second gear or third gear, 1200 RPMs isn't that bad. 1200 RPMs in eighth gear is absolutely dumb. That would be the right word to say there. So when you see that, force a downshift or just get proper tuning. Because with proper tuning, we can make it so that the engine downshifts when it's supposed to, and we can also make it so that the engine drives in the correct RPM and speed that is desired for it to stay in the power band. There's not much more to say about that. It is a common problem that has plagued all the Ecodiesels. Its heaviest issues that we have seen so far with broken cranks have all been 14s. With that being said, we've seen bad bearings in 15s, 16s, 17s. We haven't really had any brand new motors that have gone out yet to find out what's going on there or if it's been fixed. But with that being said, it's just the engine lugging is what's taking the cranks and the bearings out. It isn't EGR crap, it isn't soot, it isn't whatever all the other crap that people want to make up. Every motor that I took apart that had a broken crank in was spotless. Spotless, don't get me wrong, every one of them was stock. Not a single one of them was deleted. Every single one of them was 100% bone stock, driven by your average Joe. So I will say, like I always say, I recommend that you delete them. And I also recommend that you get proper transmission tuning to save your engine.